Union has your CD options covered. Florida Credit Union, connecting your money to your life. Call 352-237-8222 for more information.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 21 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Wednesday morning. When you were young, Robin, when you were younger, did you remember saying, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to make the world a better place, right?
Yep.
You know, it sounds like sometimes when we look at what really changed the world, it wasn't politicians. Sometimes it was advertising campaigns.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one that I remember when I was a kid, and I grew up in New York, so I don't know if this was a local thing or if it was national, but it was like a real simply drawn cartoon, and it was this guy with a crumpled piece of paper, and he throws it on the ground. He says, "What's one little piece of trash?" Nothing. But it put enough of them together, and then the animation shows like the whole city filling up with trash. And it was very impressive upon me as a young guy. And I remember thinking, oh, yeah, that's right. You know, you throw your bubblegum wrapper out the window while your dad's driving the car.
Yeah.
It's nothing. But every kid in the world does that. Next thing you know, you got a big mess to have to worry about. Well, you could say the same thing about McGruff, the crime dog, or remember the crying Indian?
Oh, yeah.
And those are the two names that are mentioned on the title of a book we're going to talk about. The book is called How McGruff and the Crying Indian Changed America, a history of iconic ad council campaigns. And on the phone to talk to us about this is Wendy Melillo, and let's find out about this from Wendy herself. Good morning, Wendy. How you doing?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
My goodness, you've got a list of credentials. Can I brag about you just for a second?
Oh, by all means.
An award-winning journalist, earned a Pulitzer Prize nomination. President Clinton presented her with the White House Correspondents Association Award for coverage of the 1992 United Way scandal. I didn't even know there was one, by the way. She was the Washington, D.C. bureau chief and senior writer for Adweek, and is assistant professor at the School of Communications at American University in Washington, D.C. So somewhere along the way, you have acquired the knowledge that you know how to advertise stuff.
Yeah, I'm interested in both advertising and nonprofits.
Oh, that's interesting. And am I right that advertising changed the world, right?
I think public service advertising is one of the most interesting aspects of advertising because this is the medium that can make a difference.
Do you know
it's not... Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we know, because we do advertising too, obviously, on a small level, but we notice sometimes that commercial advertisers sometimes team up with nonprofits. Let's say, I'll use a big example, like Coca-Cola sponsoring the Komen Cure for Cancer or something like that.
Yeah, this is the attempt by corporations to appeal to audiences that want to have a good feeling about the brand. And they want their brand to do good charitable and nonprofit efforts.
And is it self-serving? Do you think? I guess it's an opinion.
Part of it is self-serving because they know that this is appealing to certain audiences.
Right.
At the same time, there is a need for corporations to engage in this kind of activity. They do feel it's important. And when it's legitimate, when it really does make a difference, then it works. But if it's just whitewashing, then no.
You see right through it, right? I think we had an example of that the other day on Veterans Day. One of our interview guests was talking about sending things to the soldiers, which was wonderful. And then it turned out the thing he was sending was this skin lotion that his company manufactures.
Yeah.
and all of a sudden we saw right through it, and we said, okay, well, thank you for the interview, and we ended it early. But yeah, it was a little bit disappointing for us.
The key here is media literacy, and it takes time to dig beneath the surface to figure out what's really going on. But we have to. We can't just accept the messages that we hear at face value.
So what's in the book? What are we going to learn by reading the book? Is it a fun read? Is it almost like a nostalgia kind of a read?
It's a combination of the fun, nostalgic stories behind the creation of the campaigns and some very important history because these campaigns didn't exist in a vacuum. They were embedded into our cultural memory and were very much a product of the historical, political, social, and cultural forces going on at the time.
Yeah, the Crying Indian is embedded in my brain. I remember that one, and that probably had a bigger impact than the one I mentioned in the intro with the little animated kid.
The Crying Indian was huge. And you have to understand that the Ad Council, which is the organization that produced all these campaigns and is the main nonprofit organization I'm writing about, had been working with a client, another nonprofit called Keep America Beautiful, since 1960. But it was the 1971 Crying Indian campaign that captured the public's imagination.
I think when Coca-Cola did that commercial with Mean Joe Green giving his jersey to that little boy, like in the late 60s, I know when Coke created that commercial, they said that it was to sell their product, but instead, to me, they really instilled family values and communication and that everybody should be treated equally. It has such a higher magnitude than what it started out to be.
Let me tell you something interesting about Mean Joe Green. The spot is from 1979.
Oh.
And what's so fascinating about it is when you test Americans, you survey Americans to say, what's your favorite ad? Mean Joe Green comes up
Really?
a lot. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's still one of the favorites in terms of product advertisements that Americans remember. And you have to think about it. You know, Mean Joe from the Pittsburgh Steelers, you know, tosses that jersey to that kid. And it's all about bringing happiness into people's lives.
Yeah.
That's what Coke tries to sell you. It's not trying to sell you the product. It is, but that product is going to make you happy. And that's advertising puffery.
I guess so. So does that apply to the Budweiser horses when there's one that came to mind for me just now is they're bowing down to the Lower Manhattan after the World Trade Center attacks.
Right. Now they've done an enormous job with the Clydesdales because you see them in practically every Super Bowl game. And this is the attempt to take an advertisement and tie it to the legacy and history of the organization. So the Clydesdales go back to the beginning where they're pulling the beer in carts, and it's become the symbol of Anheuser-Busch, just like the polar bear is the symbol of Coca-Cola.
So how does a nonprofit? Okay, how do I ask this question? In order to test how successful an ad campaign is, it's measurable in dollars, and I guess that's probably true for the nonprofits as well. But do you know, as immediately, like the McGruff? Let's use him as an example. The dog, obviously very successful, but was there a way to measure the success?
Well, what I like about McGruff is it's one of the few ad council campaigns I could find that was actually evaluated independently of the ad council. So the Department of Justice, which sponsored McGruff, paid money, gave a grant to an academic researcher to actually measure the effectiveness of the campaign. This researcher published a number of studies, and then it did an entire book on the McGruff campaign. And he found that this was very successful both in raising awareness about crime and changing behavior so that people did things to help protect themselves. So think about it. When you leave your house to go on vacation, you often ask a neighbor to pick up the papers, you leave your lights on, and we still have neighborhood watch groups today. And McGruff spawned that.
Wow, that's you don't even think about it. And that's what I guess it goes back to the idea that we can change the world if we campaign to change the world, or whether that's identified as an advertising campaign or not. But the things we do that seem to be ineffective probably are very effective, especially if they snowball, huh?
Well, what I like about public service advertising is this can work in a society like ours without having to impose even more government regulation. What I found in writing this book, however, is that wonderful Crying Indian campaign we love, there's an agenda behind it. Keep America Beautiful is not your grassroots Sierra Club. This organization, it's a nonprofit, is made up of the packaged goods manufacturers in this country. So think your Reynolds Aluminum, your Glad Plastics, your Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola. These are the companies that manufacture packages that go immediately into our garbage stream. And what the critics of the campaign at the time, particularly environmental groups, cried foul because this campaign put the focus on you and I and everyone else to pick up our litter, but what about the responsibility of corporations and the federal government to help play a role in solving our garbage and pollution problem in this country?
Now, we had the Truth campaign that was formulated by a bunch of students, and all of a sudden it became so popular and got so huge that it seems that that campaign was pulled out from under them. It just went away for a while, and then it came back, but it was in the hands of the corporations. What happened to that?
Okay, now are you referring to the Truth anti-smoking campaign?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the result of the settlement when 46 states sued tobacco companies. We call them Big Tobacco. Philip Morris, R.J., I'm just blanking at them, on R.J. Reynolds, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I said it after the fact.
The result is they had to pay to form a foundation. The organization behind the Truth campaign is called the American Legacy Foundation. When you're talking about the students, the campaign has the target audience, which is tweens, 12, 13, 14, youngsters, young teenagers, deciding whether the advertising is going to work or not. And so that organization is still very much in existence, but it lost a lot of its funding after about 5 years because the tobacco industry was very smart. It put something in the legislation called a sunset clause, and if cigarette sales fell below a certain percentage, they did not have to put money into the Truth campaign anymore.
Okay. That's interesting.
We've seen some new ones that just came back out. Legacy tried social media for a while, which is why you didn't see them on the air, and now they're back on the air again.
So, Wendy, could we go back to the Crying Indian? I was a little bit confused about the Crying Fowl. So, in other words, that whole campaign was sponsored by the same corporations that were making the garbage that we were supposed to throw away?
That is indeed the case. The client in the case was Keep America Beautiful, and the organizations that make up Keep America Beautiful are the packaged goods manufacturers in this country.
So why is there a foul in that one? It seems like
the environmental group said, why is it up to only individual citizens to pick up their litter and help solve the garbage problem? Why aren't the corporations playing a bigger role in this? In other words, the responsibility shifted. The campaign put the responsibility on individuals as opposed to corporations. That's where the concern was. By
the way, the Ad Council provides us with a lot of material. For the listeners' sake, we when we get Ad Council CDs in the mail with the one that I remember really well was, oh my goodness, it was the John Denver campaign. So that's how long ago it was, because he's been dead a long time. It was the trees one.
Arbor Day.
Plant a tree, the Arbor Day one. Are you familiar with that one, Wendy?
No, that one I'm not recalling off the top of my head. I'll have to look it up. But tell me about it.
Well, I guess what stuck out for me was the song. And I think maybe John Denver wrote it, and ever since I guess they still use it. But let me just ask you in generalizations about jingles, about songs, because let's see, what was the one song? Don't Cross in the Middle. Remember? Don't cross in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle. Remember that song?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Do anybody remember that one? So, I mean, how effective is it to have a jingle in a public service announcement?
It's extremely effective because what happens is if it's particularly catchy or sticky, it stays in your mind, and then you have automatic recall. And advertisers use it for product as well as in public service advertising, because it can be very effective. You get a sound, a series of words in your head. It's rhythmic and repetitive, and it leads to recall.
Do the celebrities get paid for their endorsement? Tennis player Arthur Ashe was in a lot of ad council spots. Do people of that magnitude get paid to lend their voice, or do they do it as a public service themselves?
Typically, they do it as a public service, and it's very difficult to get celebrity endorsements. I have seen times when in the initial planning, you would like to have musicians, you'd like to have, the caliber of a Katy Perry, but you can't always work that out. So you have to have another plan going in. You can't always depend on getting a celebrity.
So does the ad council sometimes have to weigh a campaign that's being brought to them, especially if it has maybe political divisiveness? Is that the word? Where there's two sides to it?
Yes. The ad council is very careful to avoid anything that is too controversial, that smacks of advocacy, that is partisan in nature. Because think about it with your own radio station. If you were to air something that prompted criticism, your station's going to get those calls.
The problem, I think, is that once in a while you'll get like one or two people that seem to be really making a noise. Let me give you an example, and I might even push the buttons when I tell this one. And I don't think this was an ad council campaign, but it could have been. It was like these beautiful little ads that we would run for spending time with your children, being a good parent, going to the baseball games, taking the time out to go to the PTA. And then at the end it would say, from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then you would have call. I mean, just to me, when just in one ear and out the other, it sounded fine to me. But then I had calls saying, "Why are you promoting them for?"
Right.
Oh wow! I mean, wow! Who knew that was going to push a button?
And it does, because it strikes us as, okay, you're pushing one particular religion over another.
The book is called How McGruff and the Crying Indian Changed America, a history of iconic ad council campaigns. I can't wait to see the book, Wendy. Wendy Melillo is the author. What else is in the book?
Oh, I talk about Smokey Bear, Rosie the Riveter. What do you want to talk about?
Talk about the word "the," because that was a whole campaign we had on this radio station, right? There is no Santa the Claus.
Yeah, or Easter the Bunny.
I remember that campaign very well. So you just said Smokey Bear.
Correct.
So who said, you know what, we got to get rid of the word "the"? How come that was so important?
No, it was never in there to begin with.
Really?
That's funny. But you know what I'm talking about. Remember the campaigns where they were trying to educate us to know that there was no "the"?
Yeah. Remember those jingles you were talking about?
Yeah.
There was never a "the" in Smokey Bear.
Smokey
the Bear came from a song that was written about the campaign.
Oh, that's funny.
So because everybody remembered the song, that recall I was talking about, everybody then would put in the Smokey the Bear. And that is not correct. And there's always arguments about this, because people will say Smokey the Bear. I will correct them. No, you're wrong, Wendy. No, I'm right.
But you want to know something? I mean, again, talking about the effectiveness, I mean, how many families went camping or something like that and thought of those spots and put out the campfire the right way? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's a new one out that the Ad Council just released in July, and the U.S. Forest Service, and it's a couple in the woods putting out their campfire, and they go through all the correct motions. They check, they pour more water on, they make sure it's cold, and then the gentleman stands up, turns around, and he's staring at Smokey Bear. And Smokey gives him a hug. Doesn't say anything.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
the
great.
spot is called Bear Hug.
Oh.
And then the female takes a picture and tells them, "I've already posted it."
Oh, that's great. Now there was
It's a fun one called Bear Hug.
But then, now there was a few where the kids and the mom all knew how to do the right thing, but the father was the he was the apathetic one. He was
Yeah.
oh, we don't worry about that. Let's go hiking. No, Dad, we can't.
Yeah, right.
Right.
I was like, oh man.
But the history of Smokey is fascinating because Smokey wasn't introduced until 1944. The campaign actually began in 1942, and it was a direct response to a submarine attack off the California coast during World War II. And we were very concerned about our forests catching on fire.
Oh, wow.
We needed the lumber to make gun stocks and build battleships, and so we created the National Fire Prevention Campaign.
Wendy, could you do the world a favor and go to the ad council and say we need a campaign to get people to stop fighting? We need one for North and South Korea. We need one for the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Yep.
We need one for I don't know, any group that's picking on another group.
Right.
I don't know.
You're talking about peace, and that's also a very controversial thing that I'm not sure the ad council would take on because that involves politics.
Can you imagine that? You get a lot of flack, wouldn't you?
Yes, you would.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see the books. One more, just give it squeeze. I know we're at 10 o'clock already. Can we just one more? One more is in the book.
Sure. One more what?
One more, whatever. You got Smokey Bear and the.
Oh, Rosie. Let's talk about Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the wonderful "We Can Do It" poster. Do you remember?
I remember that very well.
Rosie in the polka dot bandana.
Yes,
She's flexing her muscle. Okay,
she
and
was
it
hot
says,
to us guys, by the way.
We can do it.
Still is.
She was hot.
I know. Well, this poster's fascinating because it's everywhere, and turns out it's not copyrighted. I believed that this was the advertising that the ad council created with its ad agency, J. Walter Thompson, now called JWT, for the Federal War Manpower Commission.
Oh, wow.
During the war. Okay, so this was the Woman Power campaign. The point was to get women to come into the factories to replace men who were off fighting the war because we needed to keep the economic engine humming during the war. Well, it turns out that the poster doesn't belong to the ad council. And so I'm like, what?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So it's an interesting story. I end up telling two stories in the book, the history of the poster and then the Woman Power campaign.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Again, I can't wait to see the book. How do we get the book?
Oh, well, you can go to the website of Smithsonian Books. You can get it on Amazon. I have a website called www.howmcgruffchangedamerica.com.
Okay,
so
excellent.
It's in Barnes & Noble.
All right. Well, Wendy, thank you so much for being on the air. Fun interview and very insightful, actually. And we're clearly in the same business. You just happen to be in the big time.
No, I wouldn't call it the big time. I don't.
Oh, yeah, right.
No, every area in the country is important.
Yeah, right.
Wendy, that for advertising.
That was good. That was very good. Wendy, thank you for being on the air with us. Again, for the listeners, the book is How McGruff and the Crying Indian Changed America. Wendy Melillo, Melillo. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you so much.
Fun interview. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to WOCA News Talk 1370, Ocala's source for what's happening in today's hottest, up-to-date news and topics. News Talk 1370, WOCA invites